But, you know, why? Greetings, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you are here. Today's nonsense is in the format of Standard, and it comes to us from Vonsabrewulf. As a member of the Twitch stream, you acquire channel points just from hanging out and watching. They cost you no money or anything like that. You just get them for hanging out. And there are a number of different ways of cashing them in. One of those is to have me overview one of your decks. And of course, I can do that on stream, or I can do that for a YouTube video, and that is what Vonsabrewulf has chosen. Folks, we are looking at a kind of blue-red control deck, I guess, for lack of better terminology. Very interesting deck. Not a lot that breaks from kind of the standard blue-red control style list. We're seeing a lot of similar cards that we would see in all the other lists. You know, some Hullbreaker action, some Goldspan, some, you know, Dragon's Fire, Expressive Iteration. These are not surprising to see, right? Very, very good cards. It is notable that we are on just the 20 regular lands, and then some Jwari Disruption, Spikefield Hazard. So 20, 27, you know, whatever. But I think it is notable that, considering these are just as much lands as these are, the fact that we have 27 makes it pretty okay, even for a more controlling style list. The good thing about them is, though, that they are also spells. So if we're flooding out, we can interact. Lots of X1s, you know, Thalias, things like that, that are very, very good for Spikefield Hazard to take care of and clean up. That said, you know, I think there's a lot of blue-red control here. So let's get into some games and see how we feel about this blue-red control list. All right, folks, here we are up against, I don't know even where to begin pronouncing that, so I'm not going to bother. We're just going to say good luck to our opponent. Keep the hand. I think it looks good enough. We have just the two lands. A little bit awkward here because they're both tapped lands, but alas, you can't always get what you want. We would like an untapped land if at all possible, of course. That would be great. Unfortunately, we get a Celestus instead. I think the plan is just going to be consider. See what our opponent gets up to over there. The Jadar coming down after the Shambling Gas. Pretty scary because now they're attacking for 4, and this is a real clock. The zombie does go away. Bummer for them, but they make a new one. So it's, you know, it's still just 4 again next turn. Now we do find an untapped mana source, which is very, very nice. We are now confronted with the decision. Do we Celestus or Expressive Iteration or Dragon's Fire, right? So we elect to try and just mitigate some of the damage here. Dragon's Fire, take our beats down to 12, but now our opponent is back down to just the one attacker, right? Which makes this much more reasonable, I think, in general. We are going to Expressive Iteration pre-land drop, of course. It is a little bit interesting because of the Celestus. We would be able to Expressive Iteration after a land drop if we do that thing, but I think the cards are valuable. So consider going to send away a Stormcard Coast. And, yep, just going to play a land, pass the turn. Our opponent on 3 mana. See if they make a land drop this time. Nope, just get in for 1 and pass. Oh, no. This is one of those times where you really don't want to be in the other seat, right? There are 2 decks that really, really excel at punishing you for missing land drops. And, of course, the first one is mono red, and I think that's the one that is the most punishing to miss land drops against. But missing land drops against control also just means you give them the only thing the control deck needs, and that's time. So our opponent, trying to mitigate the damage, does come up with a land, which is great. Hits our Goldspan Dragon, but of course we make a treasure in compensation. We're going to go ahead, play a Celestus, and considering the Behold, but of course, if we're going to do that, we might as well do it at instant speed and see what happens for now. Of course, there's also the possibility of Fading Hope at some point, or something like that. Our opponent makes a land drop, and we're not quite sure what they're going to get up to, I guess. it looks like it's Immersturm Predator. Okay, that's a good one. Opponent going to get in for 1. And rather than spend our mana, I think we're just going to hold on because we do have the Hullbreaker Horror coming up. So we now have 2 mana to spend after Hullbreaker Horror. And by doing nothing, we get to flip the Celestus, gain another life. It turns out, man, oh man, our hand is just stacked here. Whenever you discard an Expressive Iteration, you begin to question if you made the right decision. But what do you do, right? This is very strong. So Immersturm Predator going to crash in. Yep. And we're contemplating taking it because that's a lot of damage. You don't want to go down to 6 against a deck that has red mana because, you know, they could burn you out. But I think at the end of the day, it is the correct decision. We're going to wait until the end step. Yep, Draugr Necromancer comes down. And I think, folks, considering they've only got 2 blue mana, or I mean 2 black mana, we are in really good shape. Now, yes, it would be very tempting to do some other things now, but we've got to be patient because if our opponent does have a 2 mana removal spell, we only get to cast 1 of our 2 cards. We can either Behold or Fading Hope. By waiting to untap, we now get to Expressive Iteration for full value. Bouncing the Immersturm Predator back. Yeah, I mean, you know, put cards in our hand, put cards elsewhere. At this point, it feels a little bit like a foregone conclusion. Rather than, you know, attacking, like, with just the Hullbreaker Horror alone, attacking with the Goldspan Dragon is really nice. Because you got to remember, essentially, it becomes a 3-mana spell. So, because it creates a 2-mana treasure. And the fact that we have 3 instants to cast, and we can cast them all with the mana we have available. Oh my gosh, then we draw Negate. Yeah, this feels like it is very much GG. And it really doesn't matter what our opponent does here, unfortunately. The good thing about this deck, of course, is that at least when you're swinging with a 7-8, oh boy, yeah, we get to negate here. Feels good. Going to bounce their treasure because why not? We don't really want to give them the Invoke Despair back. We would rather just deny it forever. We're not expecting there to be any recourse to this, especially once we take away their mana. So now they're down to just the swamp. And we're going to untap and kill them. So, yep. Hall of Storm Giants, Hullbreaker Horror, Goldspan Dragon. More than enough to get the job done. GG, opponent. GG. All right, folks. Here we are up against KSC. Hey. Guess we're going to start on the red side, just in case we need to use a Spikefield Hazard as a spell. We do get a Hall of the Storm Giants to come on down. We now have blue and red, and Expressive Iteration, should we elect to go that direction. Our opponent on Jund colors. Hey, look at there. These things are good. We do get to make our land drop with Sokensen, still hold up Spikefield Hazard. Yeah, all these things are fine, I think. One of those good things about having lots of card selection is that, you know, you get to choose from a lot of cards, right? Our opponent, kind of deep in the tank here on their turn 2. I don't blame them. They are definitely, you know, when you're up against the blue-red control, your early turns are going to be very, very important. It's important to try and get on the board early and capitalize on some of that tempo. Our opponent, unable to do that, goes with Rimewood Falls and pass, likely feeling a little bit bad about that decision. So we're just going to go ahead and pass. It's true we could have foretold, but I think we would rather just hold up as much interaction as possible and then decide. It turns out, man, those are great. We would love a land drop and a Goldspan Dragon, if you don't mind. Indeed, our opponent just takes the 4, and we now have 2 mana available for a Disdainful Stroke or Dragon's Fire, should the opportunity present itself. We would really rather not have our opponent kill our stuff, but what on earth? Raito Sentinel comes out of the hand. Oh boy. Well, Contemplating killing it, but, you know, why? We're just going to jam another Goldspan Dragon and now charge in. And hit our opponent down to 8. They are now dead on the crack back. If they do nothing, well, okay. Disdainful Stroke. I'm sorry, opponent. I really would have liked to see your, you know, Kami War deck or whatever. As it turns out, Goldspan Dragon is just a really solid game plan, you know. So, either way, GG, opponent. We are now up against Belgarathi, and yeah. Keepable hand, making land drops, going to be drawing cards. We don't have any interaction yet, which is scary. You know, the control deck not doing any controlling. You're never really excited about that. But, you know, is what it is. This turn we do get to consider and behold, or behold the considerations, or, you know, whatever. Alright, Belgarathi goes with Reckless Stormseeker. We're now presented with a decision. We elect to go for consider, send away the land, looking for interaction, don't find it. Well, okay, so I guess we take our beats. We will still behold, but we wanted to, you know, represent something if things happened. Admittedly, they made their land drop and stuff, so I don't really know what I was expecting to happen, but, you know, yeah, do what you do, I guess. So we Celestus into Reckoner Bankbuster, recognizing that, darn it, we are going to need to either develop our mana heartily or interact in some capacity. As it turns out, our opponent goes with Maniform Hellkite, which is a heck of a card. And, oh my goodness, thank heavens. We pull a Dragon's Fire off the top. Pretty happy about that. And we were going to go for the Goldspan Dragon first, just to get it onto the board. But we would have to attack with it there, and I think we would rather hold on and draw cards with either Reckoner Bankbuster or the Memory Deluge rather than get the Goldspan Dragon down, and we are perhaps regretting that just a little bit now because they have the second Reckless Stormseeker. Good lord. All right, interaction, please. No, okay. Well, shoot. All right. Opponent going to crash in for 6, down to 4. Good lord. Consider, thank heavens. Little interaction. Couldn't have been one card deeper, though, huh? Couldn't have been one card deeper. All right, so now is the time. We're going to go ahead and Goldspan, but don't really want to attack here. Feel like we need to block. The problem is, if they have a land drop on the Den of the Bugbear, man, the whole thing just feels bad. It is quite possible it was the better play to play the Goldspan Dragon a turn earlier and attack with it, use the treasures, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah, all right. Well, fine. Animate the Reckoner Bankbuster. We can still block now. I think this is just kind of a punt from our opponent. Activating the Den of the Bugbear is a, you know, kind of just a win there, I think. Admittedly, they didn't know what interaction we have, so we wait for them to swing just to make sure they are committed here before obviously interacting. Reckoner Bankbuster does a little blocking. We drop to 1. Well, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like we're excited about being at 1. That would be a fib. But we want to flip the Celestus so we no longer are at 1. Gain a life, we're now at 2. So the Den of the Bugbear can't just kill us with the Goblin. We discard a Memory Deluge, but draw more interaction. There's the Fading Hope. That's a good one, folks. That's a good one. All right. Opponent tries to cast Goldspan Dragon. We send it right back. We get to draw a card with Reckoner Bankbuster. Okay, that feels good. Burn down the house. Darn it. That's a card as well. How do we want to go about this, though? It is tempting to Goldspan Dragon, knowing that they have their own Goldspan Dragon. But okay. You know, we trust our deck to provide us with interaction. And it does so. The Atwara is a very, very strong card because it can target the Goldspan Dragon without giving a treasure, right? So our opponent now trying to decide how to go about their turn elects to go with Den of the Bugbear. All right. Well, so we behold the multiverse then. Send that away, but do get the Dragon's Fire. Feels good, man. Feels good. Rewarded. I elect to show the Goldspan Dragon, not because we're excited about that, but because they've shown us a little bit of pumping stuff, and it's very unlikely they have a pump spell, but I don't want to lose the game because our opponent's decking something maybe a little less standard, and we intend to cast the Goldspan Dragon this turn. We do need to eventually get their life total to 0, right? And we would like to cast 2 spells this turn, depending on what we draw, because we wanted to flip the Celestus. It turns out that's not a possibility, unless we wanted to burn down the house and make dudes, but of course, then our opponent would just crack back with the Goldspan Dragon. So, we Atawara, sending that back. Oh, crud, our opponent's on green mana? Well, that's not good. What's our opponent doing with green mana? All right, the opponent does decide to hit our Goldspan Dragon. So while it's on the stack, we spend the extra mana to crack the Reckoner Bankbuster, draw a card. Celestus going to now gain us another life, back up to 3. And we're presented with some options. We are going to crew up. Again, we need to get the game ended sooner or later, so we crash in for 4 and pass the turn. Sure enough, we cast no spells. Celestus brings us up to 4 life. Feels good, man. We send away the burn down the house. This game is happening all at instant speed. Oh my goodness, and they run out the Goldspan Dragon. Jwari Disruption on turn 40? Not quite. Still getting the kill, and oh my goodness, it is now looking just a little bit over, and Belgarathi scooping him up. All right, next game. Nemexar. Good luck, Nemexar. They start with Den of the Bugbear and Flyer Blade Charger. What's going on over there? Well, we'll find out. Trying to decide how to go about this. I think we're going to take the awkward route with the Stormcarved Coast tapped. Jwari Disruption does at least interact on some axis. Not guaranteed to get any actual counterspell with it, but we would like to do that. So we're just going to play the Field of Ruin, get it onto the battlefield for that Den of the Bugbear later if things happen, and plan on trying to Jwari Disrupt. Yes! Feels good, man. Always feels good when you get that sensor off. Alright, so looks like it's Foretell time because we're not that worried about the Fireblade Charger, but oh boy, a Hulking Bugbear is, you know, kind of a lot of damage. We go from, you know, very safe at 18 and taking 1 to down to 14 after having taken 4 with 4 still on the board. So we send away our soft interaction there, make our land drop. Pretty happy about that because we can now Dragon's Fire. Nemexar plays a land and another Hobgoblin Bandit Lord. Inconvenient. Opponent goes to the attack step. Well, fine. Dragon's Fire. Trying to decide if we want to reveal a dragon, and we're going to be on the safe side. Again, it is unlikely our opponent is doing any pumping or anything, but there's no reason to, you know, kind of lose the game on the spot for a relatively avoidable circumstance. So we do the thing. Our opponent hits us for 4 more, down to 10. With that Den of the Bugbear looming, we're feeling the pressure here. No land drop. Very bad. Okay, Expressive Iteration. Please come through. Missing the land drop here feels a little bit like a nail in the coffin. Oh my goodness. And then it's a tapped land? Ay. Yeah. Not great. Well, I guess we Spikefield Cave. Foretell. And if our opponent just activates their Den of the Bugbear, we're, you know, pretty much dead here. Admittedly, kind of really wishing we kept the Fading Hope from earlier. But we felt like we needed to find more, you know, honest, good, hard interaction, you know? And we're not able to get there. Oh, no. Nemexar does animate the Den of the Bugbear. Feeling bad about that. Gonna take 8. Down to 2. Okay, we get our land drop, but it feels a little bit too little too late. The burn down of the house can make devils. But we can't block enough because the Den of the Bugbear is going to make an extra dude. So I guess we have to consider... And these, of course, and for the record, you know, the burn down the house could also deal damage to creatures, but then they just animate the Den of the Bugbear and kill us that way, right? So, all right, opponent. Deep in the tank here about whether or not to allow Consider to happen. And sooner or later, I assume they'll allow this, because what are you going to do? All right. No, all these things are bad, and we are forced to scoop them up. GG, Nemexar, GG. Ghost, 7474, our next opponent. And we look at this hand. It's fine, not exciting, but fine. We start on Spikefield Cave tapped. Oh boy, they start on a Plains. Well, I guess that means Atwara and Reckoner Bankbuster for us then. Trying to set up that card advantage for the long game. Opponent tries Circle of Confining the Reckoner Bankbuster, but that's not a creature, and Circle of Confinement is not a, oh crud, Jukai Naturalist is not a Banishing Light. Jukai Naturalist, an enchantment creature, but also a 2/2 lifelinker, which is, you know, a solid card. Alright, trying to decide if we want to make our land drop. Apparently, you know, it's a little back and forth, but we will do it. So Kenzan, gonna make it to the battlefield. 4 mana available, but by casting the Celestus, we get the day-night cycle happening. We can hold up Negate, and of course we know our opponent's doing enchantment-themed things. Hey, there we go. If they had done nothing, we still get to draw with Reckoner Bankbuster, so it's, you know, fine. Opponent does get in for 2. They gain 2, we lose 2. We're gonna go ahead and expressively iterate. Whoa. This is a pile of magic cards, to be sure. All of these look great. Trying to decide how to go about it. We're going to put the Behold in the hand, the Deluge back, and just take care of the Jukai Naturalist. This does, again, allow us to draw cards. A card with the Reckoner Bankbuster. It's also notable, folks, putting those counters on there will eventually turn the Reckoner Bankbuster into an attacking threat. So, not too disappointing there either. Boseiju? What? Going to destroy our Celestus. Inconvenient. But they do give us land, so honestly, it's really not that bad. Because we draw a card first, then we get our land. Thinking about the Spikefield Hazard, but decide against it. Just decide to charge in with Goldspan Dragon, drop them to 18, tie up the video game, as it were. We now can draw cards with the Behold the Universe, because, of course, the treasure taps for 2. But we can also just, you know, hold up and hang on, so to speak. Alright, so our opponent deals 1. Yeah, we elect to Reckoner Bankbuster, take the final counter off, and turn on the crewing of Reckoner Bankbuster because of the pilot. Well, the time to turn the corner has arrived. Hullbreaker Horror just on time as well. We add a 3rd treasure to the board, and our opponent kind of feels required to chump block here. I don't even blame them. We allow these things to happen. Opponent drops to 14. And we were almost ready to go with Hullbreaker Horror, and we thought, you know what? No. Let's just Lier, because Lier is currently a really good blocker as well. It allows us to hold up Dragon's Fire and Consider. Unfortunately, the Negate not going to work here because... Whoa! Yeah, forgot about that 3 CMC or less clause on the Circle of Confinement, and man, oh man, they are forced to go after our creature. Alright. Runcoid, our next opponent. And... yeah. Interesting. This hand is... inconvenient. I think it's fine because the Hall of Storm Giants gets to come down untapped, and then our mountain gets to enter untapped. Oh boy, okay. A second Expressive Iteration just fixes everything, because there's only just the one piece of interaction. You know, no counter spells or anything. Okay, yes, just absolutely gonna fire this off. Then expressively iterate. Put the Hullbreaker in hand, put the mountain away. We do get our second blue source. Suddenly the hand is feeling great, right? Admittedly, the fact that our opponent's on enchantments makes us a little concerned, and sure enough, our opponent does go with the Runeforge Champion on 3. Now presented with another, you know, questionable situation. When do we fire off Fading Hope? So we elect to just expressively iterate, try and decide how to go about this. We elect to, you know, put the Memory Deluge in hand just for raw card advantage, put the counterspell back, and continue making land drops. I think it's important that we do that thing. So our opponent going to go with Rune of Might, a previously unseen rune, but we're of course not surprised that they have it. And then Rune of Sustenance as well. They do. And it goes to both lifelinking and trampling mode. Considering the Fading Hope, because it does both save us a little bit of life and doesn't matter. GG opponent. All right, folks, we are now up against Nelson G85. Good luck, Nelson G85. And yep, Jwari Disruption tapped. And we're going to hang on for dear life here. We have a little bit of interaction, but not a lot. Merfolk Windrobber, interesting. Yep. Lava Guide Pathway comes down. We now have access to several of the manas. Opponent going to mill one of our cards over. It was a mountain. We're not too sad to see it go. Concealing Curtain. What on earth? Okay. Jwari Disruption can't hit it because, of course, it's just a 1-mana spell. Trying to decide if we're actually going to expressively iterate this turn. We elect to do so because we don't have a dragon for the Dragon's Fire. So, trying to decide what direction to go. We put the Disdainful Stroke in hand, the River Guide Pathway out. We go ahead and make our land drop with the second blue source because, you know, it's a good thing to do. And pass. Our opponent. Alright. Does go for the Revealing Eye. Going to take something. It's the Lier. Okay, well, we take 4 for the trouble. Merfolk Windrobber. Mills over a Field of Ruin. We go with Stormcarved Coast and have decisions to make, but we don't have to make them now. Alright. We elect to, you know, not continue taking too much damage and go for the Dragon's Fire on the Revealing Eye. Opponent may have counter magic here, and we're prepared for that. In that we can untap and burn down the house if we get an untapped land, and if not, you know, we're not strictly dead. So it is what it is, but we would be much happier going to 14 with 1 power from our opponent than going to, you know, 11 with our opponent still having 4 power. So opponent goes with another 1 toughness creature, so we just fire off the Cinderclasm for the 1 damage and sweep their board, actually. 2 cards left in hand for our opponent, and it's starting to look pretty good for us. We expressively iterate, popping a Goldspan Dragon into our hand. Oh boy, that feels real good, man. We now have a plethora of interaction, and Nelson says, that's good enough. GG. All right, welcome back, folks. That was a wild ride for sure. As far as the deck goes, honestly, the deck was great. It really picked him up and laid him down. I showed you all the games except for one, and it was a loss, but I kept a bad hand and then just didn't draw lands. So it was one of those games where it wasn't really very satisfying to show. Admittedly, there was a win or two in there where the opponents just said, man, I'm not interested in playing this game, and scooted. So I wouldn't necessarily say that's overly exciting either. Here, let's move me right over here out of the way. There we go. But, you know, there was at least a little bit of magic that happened, so we put them in, whereas the other one there, we literally cast 0 spells, so it was, you know, I ended up cutting it. But I did want to let you know that it happened. As far as this deck goes, I think the deck's great. I feel like doing a bunch of nitpicking about it is nothing short of just that, right? It's just kind of nitpicking. You know, when we crushed it this hard, it is what it is. As a matter of fact, I always take the deck stipulations and that sort of thing into the play queue. Because different people will submit different lists for different reasons. Some people just want to win every single game, and just 100% win rate makes me happy. There are other people who are like, man, I built this deck just for fun, and I don't want anybody to feel bad. So I took this into the play queue. Honestly, I felt bad for taking this into the play queue. It felt like, you know, beating up on people just for trying to have a good time, you know? So if you're going to play this deck, I recommend the ranked queue. Just for being polite to your fellow man, so to speak. But I would say that there are a couple of changes I would consider if you were interested in nitpicking. And the first is, and probably the most significant one is we are a English IR speak good. Are we a Lier deck or are we not a Lier deck? Lier is an amazing card, and I am not going to short this for anything. The deck is fine with it in there, but if you were trying to eke out your next couple of percentage points, spells can't be countered. We're running Saw It Comings, Disdainful Strokes, Jwari Disruptions, and Negate all in the main, right? So particularly if you are a best of one deck, there's a decision that has to be made here, in my opinion. Either we're countering spells or we're not. So this could easily become something else and potentially even out our curve just a little bit. Oftentimes, we really, really want to be gold spanning as soon as possible and just ending the game because gold span also lets us hold up our 2-mana interaction, right? So whether it be counter spells or Dragon's Fires and things. So Lier being a 5-drop is nice for closing the game, but I think it would actually be better if we had a 3-drop. Just to even out the curve, right? If you notice our little curve considerations, we have a million 2s, which is great. 2s are very powerful, and particularly in this archetype, when you have Goldspan Dragon making 2-mana treasures, right? But I think we could do something really nice if Lier happened to be a 3-drop. Alternatively, if you're like, yeah, I think I do want to be a Lier deck, though, because the card is great. No argument. Well, then maybe we should consider different kinds of interaction than like Saw It Coming, Disdainful Stroke, and Negate. Maybe we're just better off with some more damage-based removal or something like that where, you know, maybe some of the main deck of Braids or something might come in handy. Just so that we can recast them with Lier. The biggest problem I had with when Lier did come down was just, you know, several of our spells were kind of not great from the bin. Want to stress, it's a little nitpicky, so take it or leave it. But I would say that. Secondarily, I would say that with the presence of lots of vehicles, I think Prismari Command specifically is really good, at least for these couple of weeks before the next set comes out or whatever. I would probably heavily consider another Prismari Command in the main. Still, a little bit nitpicky, but it is what it is, right? That said, the deck was great. So if you were like, you know what, appreciate the advice, I'm going to leave it. Okay. The deck's great, right? And I'm not going to argue with that. So it is what it is. I would say thank you to Vonsabrewulf for the opportunity to play the deck. It was a blast. I look forward to seeing you in chat, and you all have a wonderful day.